Watershed is defined as the landform which includes the collection and transport of water. Therefore, when we consider the impacts of the watershed, we must look at land use. Erosion is a factor related to soil type, climate, and land shape or gradient. In normal conditions, the relationship between erosion and deposition reaches a balance. When soil is disturbed either through natural forces such as floods or through the actions of man, the watershed has a limited ability to absorb these changes. When the changes are severe, the system becomes unstable and recovered to natural conditions. Given that, in certain cases, the landform and its interaction with the water is unstable, what role can the beaver play? How can it be successful in fulfilling its historic part in our watershed?
My name is Ken Timothy. I'm from Westside Ranger District. I'm a wildlife biologist. And as I understand, the purpose of this trip is to come analyze it, look for potential beaver in the area and fisheries along with it. We'll evaluate, see what habitat's there, and then we'll wrap it up and see where we're at from that.
The Forest Service, you and Forest Service, would you be willing to look at other areas for?
Oh, we're always willing to look. I mean,
okay.
I'd be closed-minded if we said no.
Oh, okay.
But we're always willing to look, and I don't want to appear that we're negative on it, but before we introduce something in there and then create a problem, we want to make sure we're doing something good.
Right, and we don't want to set the beaver up for failure
Yeah,
either.
right. And then, like I said, if they're not there right now, there's generally a reason they're not, because they hasn't supported them in the past.
Yeah.
It's generally a rule. I mean, not always, but generally a rule. If they're not there now, they've probably been there at one time and they was lacking something and had to move on. And I don't know. I can't honestly tell you, I'm not familiar with it enough to know if we've got any colonies thriving at all. The aspen will be gone, and then the beaver don't have anything to live on, and so then they move on, nothing to maintain the dam, it washes out. And then when you get new shoots coming in, cattle like those tasty shoots, and then they'll use that. And that's an area where, there's not habitat for them to start with. But if you got habitat enough to support a colony of beavers, then you don't run into that problem.
I'm the regional wildlife manager for the Fish and Game Department for this corner of Southeast Idaho, so my job involves management of everything except fish, so all the birds, mammals, etc. And I'm interested, I guess, taking a look at this with you and trying to get some rough assessment. First glance, look at the potential for beavers here and see if there might be some benefits that we could accrue. There are some places where also that beaver were and are no more, and I think it might be more related to things like people shooting them, or maybe a little too enthusiastic about trapping in some cases. They've just been eliminated and they haven't had time to find their way back there yet. They probably would eventually.
This might be fresh maintenance.
Many forms of wildlife benefit from the beaver dam. Deer, elk, moose, and numerous bird species all share in the rich forage possible only with the dam's high water table. Huge wetland area. On the south side, South Fork. One of the most observable values provided by the Beaver's dams is sediment capture. Sediment inputted into the stream, also known as suspended solids, results from landform disturbances in vulnerable areas next to streams. By slowing the water velocity, beaver dams capture and sort sediment into gravels, sands, and fine particles where they can be utilized by soil-dwelling plants and animals. TSS, total suspended solids, is a pollutant of primary concern throughout the watershed. When compared with data gathered from stream segments without beaver ponds to those with, the improvement is dramatic. But we don't need volumes of data to see this effect. Simply observe muddy water going in and clear water going out of these highly engineered structures. To answer the question posed earlier, why beaver, it's best to reflect upon the attempts to duplicate the efforts of the beaver by asking a few simple questions. Do they raise the water table? Do they reduce nutrient pollution? Do they increase available forage? Do they create viable fish and wildlife habitat? Are they self-maintaining? Do they capture sediment and reduce TSS? If we look critically for the answers to these questions, we may begin to see why more and more ranchers, farmers, and land managers are requesting beaver be put into their areas.
Yeah, I'm Larry Sherburne. I'm with the Southeast Idaho Fly Fishers Club, and actually a trained range management specialist at one time. But I'm retired now, so I got lots of time, as so-called, and as I told you, I don't have any time to do what I really want to do. But I think there's a big area that we can do where the beaver are needed in the woods where they used to be, and I'd like to involve the young people into some of the clubs, Boy Scouts and 4-H'ers, if we can. That's kind of the second step of reintroducing the species there and helping with habitat improvement. And I think we can all work together, especially with the rancher that's using the permits, and get the job done. Thank you.
May have to build a holding pen at the site where we trap them, as well as a holding pen at the site where we're going to release them, so we get them all there at the same time. Plus, this is a very small stream level, but it's got a half a CFS or something. And there's really there's no ponds there, there's no cover for them, but there's some old dams. We know they were there historically. This is where that landowner removed them, and so we're thinking, okay, we go in there with some sandbags or whatever and build that water depth up enough so that they have some security there, and hopefully they'll stay if we can get all those elements together.
The key word that I always use is I do stream surveys. I always call them historical dams. They're mounds, they're growing over, but they ain't used.
Yeah.
So that's telling you there used to be beaver.
They were there at one time. Even though there's a dam up there and the lodges up there,
Right.
this is what the road people were concerned about. So what Laverne did is his first trap that he set it right in here. So the back of the trap is here and the front's there.
Those traps are rigged up for over. It's nice made for that, are they?
They fit perfect. Now why he did that is right over here.
Well, they gotta look for the running water, I know that.
They are.
Live trapping and transplanting workshops, valid population counts, development of engineered structures to resolve conflicts are a few of the components needed for sound watershed management. And, through continued research, education, and outreach, rest assured the beaver will resume its rightful place as our watershed guardian.
So what's the main objection you say is that the beaver and the cattle are incompatible? Is that the the main?
No, they can be compatible. They can be compatible.
Come on, fish. Don't run at me.
Fishing is one of the most popular pastimes in Idaho's beautiful outdoors. It's challenging, it's exciting for all ages, and it fuels hours of storytelling about landing the big one.
They are beautiful fish.
But have you ever wondered where all those big, beautiful trout come from that are stocked in Idaho's lakes and streams? Or why, even in a time of difficulty for Idaho's salmon populations, anglers can still enjoy the thrilling challenge of landing a feisty salmon or steelhead? Many of our favorite fishing holes owe their success to Idaho's fish hatchery programs. In the wild, female fish lay their eggs in the gravel bottom of a stream or a lake. After the male fertilizes the eggs, some of them will hatch, and the tiny fish called fry begin a turbulent new life. It's tough living, filled with predators and challenges that ensure only the strongest, healthiest fish survive. The ones who live to adulthood will, in turn, lay eggs, and a new generation of fish will be born. It's a cycle of nature developed over millions of years. In a hatchery, that cycle of nature gets an extra boost. That's because survival rates in hatcheries are much higher than in the wild. More eggs are fertilized and hatched into healthy fish. Here, there are no predators, so more fish grow fat for release into lakes and streams. Idaho's anglers benefit with more trout to catch and more salmon to reel in. At the same time, hatchery programs conduct valuable research, and some hatcheries are saving certain stocks of salmon from total extinction. But to understand how Idaho's hatcheries first started, you must step back in time, back to the days of the Wild West and the Great Gold Rush.
This is the first hatchery building, or the first one that he built.
Bud Ainsworth is a third-generation fish culturist. His grandfather, Joseph Sherwood, was an entrepreneur and the owner of one of Idaho's first fish hatcheries. It was the 1880s, and a mining boom in nearby Montana attracted thousands of workers. The miners needed food, so locals in eastern Idaho made a year-round business out of catching cutthroat trout. In winter, the fishermen spent long hours on a frozen solid Henry's Lake, catching boxes full of fish.
Out on the ice, a whole group of people, all the people, local people, that's what they did in the wintertime because there wasn't any other jobs.
But the thriving commercial fishery threatened to wipe out the local trout population. Bud's grandfather saw the writing on the wall.
He felt like that they were depleting the Henry's Lake cutthroat too much commercially, and so he felt like he should start rearing some cutthroat and putting them back in the Henry's Lake.
Sherwood converted an old barn into a cultivation house. He collected eggs and sperm from wild trout. He filled wooden boxes with water to hold the tiny fish. And over the next 3 decades, the Henry's Lake hatchery released tens of thousands of cutthroat trout. It was the beginning of Idaho's long hatchery history. In 1907, the first state-owned hatchery opened its doors. Hayspur Hatchery in central Idaho was constructed to produce trout for nearby waters. Soon, state hatchery managers learned what Joseph Sherwood already knew. Raising fish takes a lot of food. And in the days before refrigerators, rounding up fresh food every day took a lot of hard work.
In the early days, of course, hatchery programs were pretty much fed off of horse meat and horse meat byproducts. We did a lot of grinding of older horses and the liver and spleen products. It was a wet diet that were kind of ladled into the raceways by hand.
Fisheries manager Tom Rogers says because food was so difficult to come by, early hatcheries only held fish a short time, releasing them at just a few inches long. When it came time to transport thousands of pounds of fingerling fish, it took nothing short of hard work and sweat to get the job done. As late as the 1950s, hatchery fish were transported in 10-gallon cream cans. The cans were topped off with ice to keep the fish cool, then loaded onto Model T trucks and mule trains for delivery to Idaho waters. But sometimes the mule trains turned into a flying fish rodeo.
Some of the old mule trains might have been actually planting fish on the trail going into the receiving waters.
Let's get it.
In a few cases, mule trains still continue today. This Idaho Department of Fish and Game fish taxi delivers tiny trout fry into hard-to-reach high alpine lakes.
Mix a little lake water with it here. Ease them into it. Move it home.
Lightweight plastic bags have replaced heavy metal cream cans, and that's just one of the many advancements in fish transportation. In the 1940s, airplanes took the weight off the backs of many mule trains. Today, most alpine lakes are stocked with a splash from the air. On the ground, hatchery managers replace small containers with larger truck tanks.
Distribution units are on the go all summer, transporting trout to accessible fishing waters throughout the state.
But loading the fish was still backbreaking work. By the mid-1950s, fish hatcheries scattered across the state were raising everything from rainbow trout to bass to salmon. About that time, a major change in fish cultivation altered the way every hatchery raised fish. The invention of a dry, pellet-like fish food eliminated the need for fresh ground meat. The food, still used today, stores more readily, packs more protein and vitamins, and is more efficient, meaning it takes less dry food to put more weight on each fish. Dry food caused a major shift in hatchery cultivation. It reduced labor and mechanized the feeding of fish. And it allowed hatcheries across Idaho to raise fish beyond the fingerling size and up to catchable size, 8 to 12 inches long. At the same time, improvements in transportation made moving the fish safer and easier. Today, stainless steel tankers equipped with oxygen tanks and water temperature controls cause less stress on the fish and increase survival rates. The basics of fish cultivation have not changed much since Idaho's first hatchery opened its doors at the turn of the last century. Those basics remain true in modern fish hatcheries, and modern fish hatcheries face many of the same old challenges. One major challenge is disease. Just like people in a big crowded city, fish crowded into hatchery raceways can quickly spread disease. But today, scientific advancements have made great strides in raising healthy, disease-free fish which won't adversely impact their wild cousins.
We handle somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 cases a year here at the Eagle Lab.
Eagle Fish Health Lab near Boise is recognized as one of the best in the country among our nation's state wildlife agencies. It works much like a hospital for humans, only here the patients are fish. Hatchery trout, salmon, steelhead, and even wild fish. And just like humans, fish can suffer from various diseases caused by different viruses, bacteria, or parasites.
Okay, these are rainbow trout from one of our hatcheries over in central Idaho. We have a condition where they are potentially carriers of a bacterial disease.
When any of Idaho's 25 hatcheries calls with a problem, the lab will perform a series of diagnostic tests on the ailing fish. Eagle Hatchery is also one of the last refuges for endangered Idaho sockeye salmon. Like Chinook salmon and steelhead, sockeye are called anadromous fish. Fish that begin life in fresh water, journey to the ocean, and then return to fresh water to spawn.
This is a small population of fish in danger of extinction, certainly if it were not for this program.
In 1991, only 4 adult sockeye salmon returned from the ocean to their natural birthplace in the Sawtooth Mountains. In the fall of 1990, there were none. No question sockeye salmon teeter on the edge of extinction. The Eagle Fish Hatchery is trying to keep this species alive. Jeff Heindel is a fish culturist at the lab.
I like to think of this as a bank. We are preserving a small portion of genetic material so that if someday in the future migration conditions change which might favor anadromous fish in Idaho, we can take this captive population, this gene pool, release it back out into the wild, take a hands-off approach and allow this, you would still have the genetics there for this fish to be able to return naturally without man's intervention.
The program is already working. In the 2000 migration season, more than 200 sockeye salmon raised at the Eagle Hatchery and released into the wild returned to their native spawning grounds at Redfish Lake. It was the biggest return in a decade. Today, many salmon hatcheries are racing against extinction, and hatchery managers are doing everything they can to raise healthy fish that survive in the wild. Modern hatcheries simulate the natural environment with baffles that provide shade and camouflage raceways. Salmon actually change in color to adapt to their surroundings, so the camouflage will prepare them for a natural stream better than the traditional cement raceways. Hatchery-raised salmon are marked by clipping a fin and in some cases even sterilized so they don't crossbreed and weaken wild stocks of fish. And hatchery salmon perform another valuable function. They allow anglers to take home salmon species that otherwise they'd have to let go. If these fishermen on the Salmon River caught a wild salmon, they'd have to release it back to the river. But a surplus of hatchery-raised Chinook means a bonus for the dinner table. Over the past century, Idaho's fish hatcheries made great strides in improving Idaho's fisheries. From resident hatcheries that raise trout, bass, and other local species, to salmon hatcheries which are working to save endangered sockeye, Chinook, and steelhead, to research hatcheries which are improving the health and survival rates of all fish. These continued advancements in cultivation, rearing technology, and fish transportation ensure Idaho's hatchery fish will swim strongly into the future.
Some things require experts at every stage.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Others are more just a matter of taste and preference.
Just the way I like them.
Buying a home falls somewhere in between. That's why you should visit HomeLoanLearningCenter.com for expert guidance. A website where you can learn just how you should go about buying a home. You'll get facts, tools, and impartial advice. From seeing a lender to settlement and beyond, there's a step-by-step explanation of the process. All at HomeLoanLearningCenter.com.
Houston, we have a solution.
Think of it as mission control for buying a home. That's HomeLoanLearningCenter.com.
Living with diabetes is the pits.
When I wake up, the first thing I have to do is check my blood sugar.
I just want to feel like all the other kids without pricking my fingers or injecting myself with insulin.
Diabetes is rough on my whole family.
When I was diagnosed, my mom couldn't stop crying. But imagine a cure.
Right now, as many as 3 million children and adults are living with type 1 diabetes. They will never outgrow it. Some will face complications like kidney failure, blindness, and heart disease. That's why the science the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation is supporting is so critical. Imagine a cure.
What's it like when you hear your calling? Will you remember where you were? Will you ignore it? Or will you listen? What if it calls you to go halfway around the world? To share your skills? To serve people you've never met? To do things you never thought you could? What will you do when you hear your calling? Peace Corps, life is calling. How far will you go?
Low-fat cheese sandwiches on whole wheat bread are high in calcium to help build strong bodies. Can your food do that? Run, throw, think, eat better. Visit smallstep.gov.